Welcome back to episode 145 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm joined as always by Adam.
Hello.
And by Cam.
Hey.
And we're a group of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Hopefully.
Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about today, boys. Modern rotation is finally upon us, and it was a big change.
It was a huge rotation.
One of the arguably biggest changes to Modern since the OG bannings after the first Modern Pro Tour, I'd say.
Rip big set Modern.
Now we're down to small set Modern.
Now it's small set Modern after the rotation happened.
First, before we get into it, let's pour one out for our boy Hogak. He was only around for a short time, but he'll always be remembered in our hearts.
Well, he can live on in Legacy where he actually sees a decent amount of play. So
Yeah.
it's probably about the right power level,
Yeah.
format wise. So it's okay there.
All right.
That's just his vibe though, right? Live fast, die young, get cast again, die young again.
Yeah. It's probably a good thing, I can't possibly have seen a world where that card did not get the axe. I just would not.
Yeah.
There were a
imagine.
few people before the announcement saying I still think there's a chance that they don't ban it. Maybe they just do something else. You're holding out for nothing. That card had to go.
The anarchist in me really wanted to see it stay, but I knew deep down it had to go.
Yeah, I mean, GP Vegas was certainly the final straw, but I'm pretty sure they were banning it no matter what. I bet if 0 copies had top-8 Vegas, they would have still banned it due to sort of the player hostility towards it. If you had played any paper tournaments or interacted with people at tournaments over the last month, the disgust was palpable.
Yeah.
And if not, people were just outright vocal, playing the mirror and just saying, this sucks. I can't wait for this thing to be banned, and they're playing the deck. It's just, that's how miserable it was. So, but I mean, it put 5 copies in the top 8 of Vegas.
Yeah. Back-to-back GPs putting 5 copies of the deck.
Yeah, gotta
into
go.
top 8.
The last time we saw even close to that was consistently seeing 3 to 4 copies of KCI, which they then axed very quickly after that.
Yeah. But even KCI wasn't on the same level as Hogak was. It wasn't as widely adopted. It wasn't just a straight up powerhouse.
Yeah, just the format was just done.
Yeah. I mean, KCI got the axe more so because the whole play patterns were miserable and it was not a fun play experience. Whereas Hogak was just way, way too powerful.
Yeah. I mean, 4 copies in top 8s for KCI when it wasn't that, adopted, not that many people adopted it rather. That's still insane.
Yeah.
For Modern, that's
For sure, yeah.
absolutely absurd.
Mm-hmm.
In a format that has, any deck feels like it only has, 7% of the metagame tops.
Yeah. And we also had some collateral damage with Faithless Looting getting the axe as well. Another card that a lot of people have been calling for a ban of for a long time. It kind of looped in with, the other main offenders of Ancient Stirrings and Mox Opal, but they live to fight another day. Thank God.
I bet if they had been played alongside Hogak, they'd have been dead too.
Yeah, if they had been in those decks, it'd been lights out. Especially Stirrings. I feel like Stirrings should have gotten it.
This was just one kid misbehaving and the whole class got detention.
Did you bring it up for the rest of us?
I don't know.
Yeah, I did. My graveyard's full.
I'm obviously a little biased, but I think Ancient Stirrings is still fine for the format. I mean, think about it. The best artifact deck doesn't even play it right now.
Scales?
No, Urza.
No, I know. I'm kidding.
We're talking about good decks right now. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the deck that definitely benefits the most from these bans. It was a deck that was probably well positioned, arguably maybe the best position pre-Hogak ban for sort of the post-rotation everyone saw coming, which I think is why you saw so many people adopting Urza decks.
Yeah.
They have to just be well positioned. They're very good, but I think they're probably fair enough. They don't just have auto wins, and they can lose a lot of games. So, and they're infinite combo you can interact with. You know what I mean? So I'm okay with Urza being a really good deck and benefiting a lot from this.
Yeah, so the reason for banning looting, they said in their article, was that over the past year, the winningest modern decks at any given point has usually been a Faithless Looting deck, which, I mean, accurate. I mean, Dredge, Izzet Phoenix, Hogak. These decks have kind of just been ruling the format for a pretty long time now. And axing this card really has shaken things up. But, I mean, the biggest shakeup besides this, of course, is the unbanning of your boy Stoneforge Mystic.
Hashtag MTG Finance. All those people who are speculating. Every modern rotation.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I'm glad I never sold my GP promo ones, because now it's time to cash in.
Yeah, they definitely jumped up in price. I mean, this happens every single modern rotation. Stoneforge spikes, and then it goes back down. But this time, looking like we're going to be staying at a high price point here for Stoneforge, which is a card I imagine they're just going to reprint right away because the demand is going to be so incredibly high for this card. The swords, like this is just a modern Masters, 17 or whatever it is.
It's going to be the cover art.
Yeah, of course. This card's just going to be everywhere. Of course, printed at Mythic.
So speaking of speculating, Stoneforge Mystic is a card that everyone, around every banned and restricted announcement, people always discussed the unbanning of Stoneforge. Is Modern ready for it? Is it still too strong? Do you guys want to weigh in on this?
I think this is actually a pretty good discussion for us to get into, because I feel like I spent a lot of our trip to Richmond the other weekend listening in to Hemsley and Adam just go off on how insane people were to think Stoneforge Mystic was reasonable to unban in Modern. And now we're living in that reality. So I would love to get your take on this.
There's a lot of layers here for why I think it's ludicrous. I think that the card just automatically becomes the only fair mid-range creature strategy, but it doesn't just automatically win Modern, because Modern is a linear combo format in a lot of ways. Even how creature matchups can play out. If you think about, for example, Temur Battle Rage decks, essentially a linear combo deck, right? I mean, they have pressure and then they try and kill you with a combo. But there's no reason to play decks without Stoneforge that are trying to grind or be whatever. I think that's an issue. The problem is, I'm not sure that they're that good in Modern. Like, being fair in Modern is just not a really strong strategy for a lot of reasons that we can get into. But I think unbanning Stoneforge is still a mistake, even if it doesn't completely dominate the format, because it makes it so you just have to play Stoneforge if you're going to play sort of fair, grindy mid-range decks. Otherwise, what value are you getting out of it, right?
Yeah.
Jund can't beat a Batterskull. Never beaten a Batterskull in their lives. People used to board that card in out of Twin to beat Jund in the sideboard until they printed Keranos, and then Twin got banned. But people used to bring in Batterskull because it was so hard for them to beat. Sure, yeah, now they have Colgan's Command, but I mean, that's a situation which you can set up to play around by having the bounce. And the fact that you can just hold priority, activate, return Batterskull, and then put it back into play right away in response to them trying to kill it. There's so many ways to protect it. It's incredibly good in the mid-range matchups, obviously. I think the swords are probably even more powerful than Batterskull, theoretically. One of the issues is that GTA is banned. GTA is just a completely absurd card.
Yeah.
So it's obviously good that that card is banned, but I think swords are equally obnoxious. There's a lot of problems with letting them be in the format in fair mid-range matchups. They just auto-win them because you just go get a sword. You have these sideboard silver bolts that auto-win certain matchups that are fair. I just think that that's not ideal. So I'm not...
So less so that it's a very powerful card. It's more that it restricts deck building for strategies in the format.
Yeah, I just don't think that fair decks, can justify not playing Stoneforge. I can't really see a justification for doing that to yourself.
Yeah.
It homogenizes deck building, and I've also heard people say that it homogenizes gameplay. Like, because you only need to play like one of these artifacts, you can just always go get the one you need if you've drawn a Stoneforge. So every game involves a Batterskull, every game involves with the correct sword, every game looks similar.
Right, and then they have to find an answer.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happens in Legacy, and it's even more powerful there. And I mean, the reason that, Stoneforge is so much more powerful in Legacy is Force of Will, right?
Yeah.
And then also on top of that, things like True Name Nemesis. putting equipment on a true name is better than, it's the best creature in Magic to put equipment on.
Yeah.
And Modern doesn't have, those sort of parallels. And again, it's also a different format. I feel like Legacy is actually a lot more fair than Modern.
Yeah.
Which is wild. But I mean, that's just what Force of Will does, right? That Force of Will and Brainstorm are just omnipresent cards throughout the entire form. 90% of decks are playing them. That actually keeps the format from being a sort of combo linear, strategy. There's a lot of interaction in Legacy, a ton.
Yeah.
Games, your experience is limited to Legacy, but you noted this when you were learning to play Legacy that, wow, actually these games go really long.
The games lasted much longer than most Modern games I've ever played.
By miles.
Yeah.
It's not even close, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that Stoneforge is way more powerful there just because of the protection. But then again, I mean, in Modern, you can play other cards that I don't think would see play in Legacy. Unearth, for example, I think gives Stoneforge a lot of options to get multiple equipment. If you're playing more equipment, say you want to play 4 or 5 pieces of equipment, which I think is a lot, but Unearth makes things pretty interesting for that. Also, Unearth Monastery Mentor in that deck seems also very good. There's lots of pretty interesting decisions. The Monastery Mentor tokens sticking around, give you a body to equip things on when, your creatures inevitably die. So as far as fair strategies, I just feel like the grindy decks can produce, and they have Path Exile because they're white. You're playing black-white, I assume, because you want to Thoughtseize, and that's insane in the mirror. There's a lot of weird things going on in Modern that make the matchup, I think, sort of miserable for what the Stoneforge decks want to be playing, because they're already going to play all the best 1-mana spells in Legacy, right? Which are Thoughtseize, IOK, Fiddle Push, Serum Visions, right? These are all just something an Esper Stoneforge deck can play. It already gets to play all those are the most played cards in Modern, right? All the 1-drops are every tournament, essentially, the most played cards. And I mean, you can play Liliana, The Last Hope, start getting back to make sure that you can cast things. I don't know. It's just, I think that makes fair mid-range matchups just, only about Stoneforge and the things that happen as a result of that. And then the other decks just don't care. Like Tron just doesn't care.
No.
If you want to take two turns off, sure, man. Thanks for the win.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this on the way here. I've played a few leagues now with Tron since the unbanning, and I think I'm 8 or 9-0 versus every Stoneforge deck I've played. Like, none of them have taken a win off me so far.
Well, right, because they have to take turns off, and they can't protect themselves, like they do in Legacy, where you have access to Force of Will to take turns off. Yeah, sure, you have Force of Negation in Modern, but it's just not the same.
No.
It's so weird. I have such complicated feelings about this because I think the card is just miserable from a play pattern perspective, but that doesn't mean it necessarily is busted in the format. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So like Stoneforge might not take over Modern. I mean, I don't think it will, just because Modern is defined by these very linear goldfish decks that Stoneforge can't take turns off because they're going to get goldfished because they have to take 2 turns off to do something. And Thoughtseize Inquisition is not enough to ensure your safety. And so I think it's not that great. But the problem is that anyone trying to play fair, I mean, then why aren't you playing Stoneforge? So I just hate that it sort of puts that squeeze on everything so that Modern just descends into, okay, well, I don't care about Stoneforge or I only care about Stoneforge. And I think that's bad.
And I think that's the point that a lot of the discussions, at least that I've seen online, miss, because the points that people argue there are either if Stoneforge is too strong for the format, and generally people say it should be unbanned because it's not too strong, and they compare it to Tron and they compare it to these other linear decks, but they don't compare it to sort of itself in mid-range decks. They're just asking about power, not about play pattern.
Where do you think the format evolves from here? Do you think now with looting being banned, do you think some of these unfair, linear decks lose a lot of power? And that maybe Modern moves now towards more of a mid-range format? Or do we think the unfair decks are just too powerful and we'll just keep checking these mid-range strategies?
I mean, does Storm really need looting to win?
No.
Right?
No.
I mean, does Adnaz? No, they don't play those cards, right? So I think those decks are good. I mean, Adnaz, quietly actually would always put up a deck or so randomly in places, considering no one plays it. Yeah, I mean, that's a deck that doesn't really care. A lot of the aggressive sort of linear decks, they don't really care. Tron doesn't care. Boggles, that deck don't care.
That deck cares about one thing, edicts. And those were not banned or unbanned.
Yeah, well, John's still around. I mean, I think John's probably still a fine choice. But yeah, I mean, I think really you can just think of, well, okay, what are the decks that can still play the most played 1-mana spells in Modern, right? Which is sort of the defining feature if you look at the Pro Tour, right? Remember that thing where it's just hundreds and hundreds of copies of just the 1-mana spells, and then everything else was hit or miss in Modern, because Modern's just so fast and so linear that you need to do stuff early with your mana or you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
And so decks that had Faithless and relied on Faithless looting are gonna lose a bunch, but there are a bunch of decks that are happy to still be casting Serum Visions, playing that kind of game. Blue-White Control is probably a lot happier. Blue-White Control is definitely a deck that's thrilled for this. I mean, that's a deck that can tune itself to have game against Tron.
Those decks, I mean, generally, at least in Standard, when there's sort of a mid-rangey deck, it takes a while before they start seeing success in a format, just because they don't know what they need to tool themselves against yet. So do you think that sort of the up-and-coming linear strategies, as you've mentioned, they're sort of the ones that have existed but were untouched? Do you think that's enough information for like Blue-White Control and Jund to know how to tool their sideboard for these first weeks, or will they lag behind a bit?
Yeah, it's hard to say. And I mean, I think we also see the return of, a bunch of other just random decks, Grixis Death Shadow, Spirits. I think Dredge probably survives, actually.
Yeah, I think Dredge has a pretty easy swap just for a card like Insolent Neonate, or there are other cards they can play, but...
I mean, it's not ideal, obviously, but, Dredge is still a very powerful shell, and it doesn't need looting. I mean, it certainly hurts that looting's gone from Dredge. I mean, I think your best starts are probably all looting starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are ways around that. There are other things you can be doing. So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I feel like Phoenix got hit really hard here.
Yeah, Blue-Red Phoenix specifically is a huge beating, because really when you think about it, they didn't really play many discard outlets outside of looting. They really relied on that card to enable their Phoenix game plan.
Can that deck adapt at all, or is it just gone?
I mean, there are different ways you can take the deck. Maybe you go less all in on, Phoenix. Like, there are Thing in the Ice decks that have been playable in Modern before. So maybe you're less so of a, Phoenix, I guess, tempo deck, and more of just a, maybe go back to Blue Moon or something.
Yeah, I was going to say Blue-Red Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Blood Moon is probably poised to be very strong with the format slowing down a bit.
Yeah.
You're not staring down the face of a 16 power on turn 2. So, you can tap out for a Blood Moon instead of just dying.
Yeah, the thing about Blood Moon, though, right now is I actually think it's in a weird, awkward spot, because a lot of the mid-range decks I've been seeing that are adopting Stoneforge are snow-based decks.
Yep.
A lot of snow-based mid-range decks which don't care at all about a Blood Moon.
Yep, and Astrolabe is, again, one of the top, it's probably top 20 played, Modern cards right now.
And it costs 1 mana.
Right.
It's exactly what you want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Astrolabe changes things drastically in Modern. It completely warps how Blood Moon can be played. So Blue-Red Moon is tough, I don't know if that's a deck that has a future. It just depends on how the Astrolabe decks end up shaking out.
Yeah.
But Prismatic, Vista plus Astrolabe make it so you can make it so your 3-color Modern deck is essentially immune to Blood Moon.
Yeah.
Especially with Vista plus Astrolabe, you're just not getting Blood Moon out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
Yeah. While we're still on the topic of Phoenix, I think specifically Mono Red Phoenix actually might get better by this banning of looting, because honestly, I think a lot of people have been tricking themselves into playing the looting Phoenix package in their prowess deck, when the deck was just so much better if you just played more 1-mana prowess dudes and more burn spells.
Just attack and do damage. I mean, I don't know. I've ranted about this enough. You don't need to hear it from me again. But the amount of times that you would just end up with Phoenix stuck in your hand and never see a looting. Do you have to mull a hand that has 2 Phoenix in it, no looting?
Yeah.
Right. Do you have to mull a hand that has a Phoenix in it, no looting?
No.
It's close. But I mean, you're already on 6 then. If you don't draw looting, you're already mauled in your burn deck. And you just feel so bad. Like the percentage you lose by playing Phoenix, I think, is way higher than what people were realistically thinking.
Yeah.
But now that you just won't play looting in Phoenix, I think Mono Red Prowess is it's a real deck. I mean, it might be better than Burn. It's just, I mean, it is a burn deck essentially, right? Mono Red Prowess is essentially a burn deck. I think there is a good argument that maybe that deck is just the superior burn. It's close.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a lot faster in a lot of games, and there is something to be said about only playing, mountains and horizon lands, so you're taking a lot less pain off your mana base. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, you can go through your deck with the Horizon lands. And then also, I feel like before, Burn was sort of seeing a lot of play because of their sideboard access, right? Having access to Graveyard Hate and Path to Exile for Hogak, other things that they could do. But I mean, if we're talking about a format where Urza, Tron, these are the decks people are playing, then Mono Red Prowess seems insane to me. I would be happy to play Mono Red Prowess against Tron, Urza. I'd be thrilled to play it against Blue Eye Control. Like there's a bunch of sort of top tier modern decks that I'm more than happy to be playing that matchup.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've heard a lot of talk about people saying, "Oh, now that Stoneforge is unbanned, that Burn is just dead. Burn can never beat a Batterskull in their life." Like, I don't think a Stoneforge deck is ever actually getting the chance to untap with their Stoneforge Mystic against a Burn deck.
Yeah, I mean, another interesting thing I was going to bring up when I was talking about all the most played 1-mana spells, right? I mean, now this also just makes the Thoughtseize pattern in Modern a little different. You might want to save your Thougtseize if in games 2 and 3 when they're on a Stoneforge deck, you just let them Stoneforge and take the Batterskull, and now they just have a bunch of Squires in their deck.
Yeah.
So I mean, for Modern it's really interesting, but. Yeah, no, Burn just doesn't care. They'll just bolt it.
Yeah, or they just start playing more Searing Blaze, Searing Blood, those cards that just kill Stoneforge with upside.
Yeah.
So if this Mono Red Prowess deck ends up better because a card in it got banned, that's 2 for 2, where a deck got cards banned and got better. Hogak improved when it lost Bridge. Red's going to improve when it loses Faithless Looting. And so then this just raises the question, are we all that bad at deck building?
That we need to be corrected by bannings.
Yeah.
Bannings will continue until real deck building improves.
It's just so funny too, because it's not like an obvious improvement, but when you actually kind of break it down and think about it, I actually think it is a huge improvement for the deck.
I think Mono Red Phoenix was horrendous, just completely unplayable if you played Phoenix in it, but I think it's very good as just an aggressive burn prowess deck. You get to play some mutagenic growths.
Yeah, you could play that card again.
That card, nuts.
This actually might be like so I'm sure Hemsley's going to correct me if I'm wrong here, but a phenomena that occurs in machine learning where like the way that they improve their algorithms is sort of by small local iterations. And so if you sort of imagine the performance of your algorithm or the performance of your deck as this like surface, you're climbing whatever hill you started on and you'll get to the top of that hill, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a higher hill that you won't get to by doing sort of small changes. But some big shakeup like this could plant you on that hill, and then when you improve again, you end up higher than you were. And so like that, it could just be that like people are unwilling to sort of jump over these valleys.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, now with all these changes, which deck would you guys say is probably the top dog now?
I'm going to listen to Adam and say, Urza.
I mean, yeah, I could be wrong here. I just think that they have so many options for how they build, but also it's a prison deck, so it might have a tough out for the first couple of weeks while it figures out what it needs to lock out, how it needs to play, and how it needs to build itself, because control prison deck, so it needs to think about what's going in its deck and why. So that might put it off for a bit. I mean, but I think you see sort of what you'd expect. I don't think things change that much again because we're dealing with Modern, a format where people just play what they own.
Yeah,
and it's a format that's tough to switch decks because historically, if you bought the busted deck, your deck got banned. You played Twin, what happened? You played Pod, You played Eldrazi. I mean, that one you had it coming.
Yeah.
But you played Blue Red Delver, Treasure Cruise, banned. Now that deck's on. When's the last time people cast a Delver in Modern? Laughable.
Yeah, can't remember. Card's so bad. Unplayable.
I mean, yeah. It's weird because maybe it's like Stoneforge where Delver's only nuts when you have Daze and Force of Will. Then it's just the best creature, ever printed. Same with Stoneforge and Legacy and True Name and all these cards. But in Modern, they're just like, you're just playing fair dumb creatures. You're just going to get Tron.
One deck we actually haven't talked about yet, but it's been quietly just top 8ing every single GP, even in Hogak Summer, was Eldrazi Tron. I mean, you think that deck's going anywhere? You think a Karn the Great Creator deck cares about Stoneforge Mystic?
Wasn't a lot of that deck's success the abundance of 1-drops, particularly 1-drop creatures in Hogak? And so and there's a lot of 1-drops in Blue Red Phoenix, etc. And they were just chalicing people.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
I mean, Modern's still going to be 1-drop
I was going
centric.
to say, those aren't going anywhere though, right? Is the issue. I think that the 1-drop spells are all still staying. I mean, there's definitely less of them though. You're right. Like we're not going to see main deck surgicals anymore, which were just everywhere. People played them constantly. They bring back your Phoenix and they, get in the Hogak mirror, blah, blah, blah,
I guess another question though then is maybe these decks that were so soft to Chalice had to stay soft to Chalice. I mean, I guess Hogak was playing Force of Vigors, but this is something that we noticed that a lot of decks weren't playing much artifact hate. They weren't playing much hate outside of graveyard hate because so much was required for all these graveyard decks running around. So sideboards are wide open again now too.
Yeah. Wide open for a lot more, artifact hate to find its way into sideboards.
It's going to take a while for the format to settle, I feel, because this is just such a massive shakeup. When you think about it, I mean, an unbanning plus bannings is just gigantic. It's so rare we see something of this magnitude happen to a format. This feels like we're dealing with an entirely new format.
Yeah.
Again, I'd be ticked if now my deck is unplayable. If I played Jund and then it turns out, you can just never beat Stoneforge decks. Oh, great. I just
yeah.
I don't know.
Right, then you can switch to junk, put in some Stoneforge, bust out those rhinos.
Well, then I'm listening. Yeah, Rhino, I'm in. Yeah. Lingering Souls actually is I think the winner there if you're going to switch. If you're going to move off of Jund, I mean, you're doing it for Lingering Souls, right? And Stoneforge, obviously, but Lingering Souls a really good sword holder.
Yeah.
So, you might see an uptick in something like Lingering Souls. Obviously, these are all things that all the new deck ideas people are trying out are all decks that just fold horribly to Tron. But it depends. I mean, maybe there's enough sort of rough, aggressive decks now that keep Tron out, right? And then Stoneforge decks look great.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say.
You were talking about Monastery Mentor earlier in these Stoneforge decks. Is its prowess does it make a token on non-creature or off of instants and sorceries only?
Non-creature.
It's non-creature.
Non-creature, yeah.
Non-creature, because in Legacy they used to combo with Sensei's Dividing Top.
Oh, right. So we can just cast Astrolabes with it?
Yep.
Ooh.
Sure can.
Yeah. The Esper Snow deck can just play, Or you can play 4-color, because you can play Kodal, Icefang Kodal.
Yep.
Which is very good in that deck, because it holds a sword super well.
Oh, I saw one
But snakes have no arms.
I don't know how he's doing it. Got it in his teeth.
You'll love this. I saw a really wild Ephemerate deck
In Modern?
in Modern.
I'm listening.
Yeah. With, the cards you would expect. Stoneforge Mystic.
Snapcaster?
No. 3 mana, get a card back from your graveyard. Green.
Oh, Eternal Witness.
Eternal Witness.
Oh, yeah. Ewit? That's actually
Ewit.
nuts.
That is
Oh,
insane.
my God.
Goes infinite with Ephemerate.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I saw one of the versions of the deck I saw was playing Time Warp. So you go infinite with Ewit, Ephemerate, and Time Warp. Just take all the turns.
Actually, so our friend Curtis did play that last week.
Yeah.
He played it and when I think he said 3-1, he should have 4-0, but he said he's dumb and bad. So
Yeah.
I don't know what he did. He's like, I mean, I played horribly all night, but it didn't matter because the deck was nuts.
Yeah. But I've seen version of the deck playing like Acidic Slime, playing Night of Autumn.
Oh, Acidic Slime? Hell yeah, dude.
You're going infinite.
Where
with
are your
Ephemerate.
terrains?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no way that deck got a bad
We
trade.
banned Ponza now.
Yeah, it was a really sweet deck, and people are trying some cool stuff out. And I mean, Ephemerate's pretty good if you're playing Stoneforge Mystic as well. So there's a lot you can be doing right now in Modern. which the format has felt very wide open for the first time in, I can't even tell you how long. I can't even remember a time when Modern has felt like this wide open.
I remember a couple years ago us saying this, and then KCI came on the scene and changed everything. But there was a time pre-KCI where, yeah, there was humans, spirits, Mardu, Pyromancer, Tron, Jund, Greenblight. They were all these decks were seeing play, Shadow, and I think we're returning to that spot.
Yeah.
I think what happened was over the years, graveyard strategies just slowly started, creeping their vines into everything, and now that's sort of leveled out with the looting ban, right? Hogak is an anomaly. We can just ignore that, I think. It's just obviously a mistake. But looting, sort of crept in, really, when you think about it, it's legal forever.
Yeah.
But it just, as new cards came into the pool, right, the power level of looting went up with the addition of those cards.
Mm-hmm.
The more and more graveyard-centric things became, the more and more, play looting saw. So I think it's been a couple years, but what happened was, looting just slowly, crept up and took over everything. And now we're back to that spot a couple years ago where, Modern feels like you can sort of play everything, which is good and bad. But I don't know. I'm still a little hesitant about saying that the Stoneforge ban is a good or bad thing. I'm quite nervous that it makes it so you have to play Stoneforge if you're not playing a linear deck.
Well, speaking of new cards entering the format slowly and ignoring Hogak, I feel like the Hogak banning will finally let people use cards from Modern Horizons to their full extent. Like, we've seen some of them trickle in, but there were cards that people were excited about, new archetypes they might create or new uses they could find in old decks that all just got put by the wayside because of how strong Hogak was. Mm-hmm. So I think we now will finally get to see kind of the intended consequences of Modern Horizon.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, there's so many really cool cards that were just completely not explored at all. And Hogak has just been kind of on everyone's minds for the past few months, however long it's been since it got printed. But I guess out of all the decks that have been pushed out of the formats, are there any cards, that you guys have been thinking about recently that you are most excited for now that looting and Hogak are gone?
I mean, for me, a lot of it is just, I already kind of mentioned, I'm excited about just playing Esper, really dumb, grindy decks and just losing to Tron.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah. I just think Unearth is a card that was printed in, Modern Horizons. That's just insane to me. I think the card is completely busted. I think it's incredible. And I just think it never saw play because, why unearth a 3-drop when you can unearth Hogak?
For free.
Yeah. So, but I think unearthing Monastery Mentors is a really, really powerful strategy. I think just tapping out for it or Stoneforge every turn and then just being able to unearth it makes it so grindy fair decks can never win versus that, right? I think it's too much. And that was my concern, is a deck that just plays, Serum Visions, Astrolabe, which triggers your Mentor, as Cam noted, right? All these decks can just start, they're Blood Moon proof as Esper because they're playing Astrolabe and Prismatic Vista. I think Esper is very strong for the mid-range decks. I think it can shut down a lot. You have incredible sideboard options. Stony Silence, Rest in Peace.
Yeah.
You have Pact and Negation, Force and Negation. You have a lot of options. You have incredible sideboard cards, and now you have Batterskull Swords plus Stoneforge. I think the deck, just as a mid-range deck, gets to play already, Thoughtseize, Inquisition, Fatal Push, Serum Visions, Path to Exile, right? These are, just the number one, right? Like, these are just the cards that are in every single top 10 most played cards in any Modern tournament. Those cards are in them.
Yo, Adam, can I borrow this deck? I got a Modern tournament coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. I also have the standard list for you too. So,
oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'll tell you later.
All right.
We'll talk about next
Just
week
lend me
or
both
something.
decks, please, because I haven't been keeping up on either format.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that good. I mean, you might just play against unfair stuff. But I mean, you could play counter magic. You could play surgicals. Your sideboard is so flexible.
I only need to win one round of Modern like I did last time.
Yeah.
And I'll just 3-0 both other formats.
But yeah, I just think your sideboard is flexible enough. I think that now, why are you Thoughtseizing into Goyf? Why don't you just Thoughtseize into Stoneforge? I don't know. It's tough. Maybe I'm, being a little cruel to the Goyf monster, because I mean that card is something else. You get enough 5-6 Goyfs online attacking, it feels pretty good. So
I mean, you can do both. That is an option.
yeah, it's also an option that you just play junk, or Abzan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I have no idea where it's gonna go.
Just play Maverick.
Yeah, I mean, that's a deck we didn't even talk about. Hate Bears.
Yeah.
This is a deck that has to be good. I actually think this deck might be nuts.
It is a deck that pretty consistently beats Tron.
Yeah, exactly. The deck can beat the unfair decks, no problem. The problem is it got pounded by Jund and fair decks. Fair decks just smash Maverick.
Yeah.
Right? But Maverick was the fair deck that could beat all the combo and unfair things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now with Stoneforge, I mean, this deck has a chance. I think it's a huge upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like, you think about decks like, what do they used to call it? Little Kid Abzan?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Playing like Anafrenza,
Yeah. Anafrenza, like Wilt Leaf Legion there too, right?
Yeah. Wilt Leaf Legion, you just a little beat down, but you have a little bit of Hate Bear strategy in you too.
Yeah. This is a time for Hex Drinker to finally shine.
Yeah.
Good. It's a good old 1 mana 2/1 aggressive in your Maverick deck.
Get them.
Yeah.
But yeah, Thalia seems good.
Yeah.
Thalia seems really good. Kasali Pride Mage seems incredible if people are playing Stoneforge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like this was the deck I wanted to talk about. I was kind of most excited for because, like we mentioned earlier in the show, I've just been steamrolling every Stoneforge deck I've played against, but I haven't played against one that's a Hate Bear strategy yet. And I've like those decks I've lose to all the time as Tron. And I think if you want to get by in the format, you have to have game against the unfair decks.
Yeah.
And just as by nature of what Stoneforge does in your deck, it automatically just gives you game in the fair strategy.
Yeah, I think that's a huge. Right? I'd be super interested in trying Leonid Arbiter, Ghost Coder, Thalia, Kasali Pride Mage. Pride Mage seems incredible. All these Urza decks, these Urza Tron decks, Kasali Pride Mage just smashes them.
Yeah, and just being by nature of being a green-white deck, you get the best sideboard hate versus decks like that as well.
I mean, you could just bring in Fracturing Gust against Urza. Just one punch their entire board.
Yeah. Think about it. You have Gust,
ya.
you have Gust, you have Force of Vigor, you have Oof, you have Stony
Knight of
Silence.
Autumn.
Like,
what do you want?
Is your oyster.
Yeah, what do you want? Knight of Autumn seems,
whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, Knight of Autumn's good for lots of matchups for that deck. I mean, I think I also there's a million decks we're not even going to get to mention on the show. So, apologies. Let us know. You can message us or something, or check out our Discord if you want to talk to us about them. Because I'm sure there's a bunch. I'm just thinking about all these different Hate Bears or different decks that get to play all these options. What about the Devastation decks, the Finale of Devastation, or the the Abzan combo decks, right? With Devoted Druid, right? How do these shape up now?
Yeah, I mean, those decks shine generally when there's less lightning bolts floating around.
Definitely. But I mean, does Stoneforge result in less bolts?
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
Your opponent's casting a turn 2 Stoneforge and you're playing a Vizier. Like, that's not looking good.
It's not good for them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think actually Vizier combo decks are prone to have a pretty good performance.
Yeah, I mean, Fatal Push is around still, which is a beating. But I mean, the deck definitely a little better. But I think Hate Bears is a deck that I'm really, and I would normally never say this because, I played the Arbiter Eldrazi and Taxes deck, and famously I said it was the worst deck I've ever chosen for a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that deck. I hate Leonin Arbiter decks. I like Maverick and Legacy though, which is weird. I love that deck. I still play it sometimes. I think it's actually very good for different reasons. But I'm actually curious about it now just because of how all your creatures line up, but also new cards have been printed that make your life a little better. You can still Ghost Quarter basics and get them with Arbiter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that deck has a lot of game to it. It's good in the mirrors. The Stoneforge mirrors because you have Pride Mage. Yeah, it's super interesting. Yeah, Modern is wide open. I would definitely be experimenting with different Hate Bears decks, though. Yeah.
Well, we don't have to wait long for a big Modern tournament. I think SCG Dallas is this weekend.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch, actually. Yeah. I'm not doing anything else this weekend. So.
When do the bannings take effect this Friday in paper, right?
Yeah, this Friday in paper. They've already been live since the announcement on Magic Online. So
yeah. Oh, yeah, right, because they're not in effect yet in paper. And tonight's Modern Night at the Wizard Tower. You can check them out for all your single needs. WizardTower.com. Free shipping on orders over $15 in Canada.
Yeah, on your Magic singles. Definitely check them out. They actually just made an announcement about their WPN qualifiers being a WPN Plus store. They get to host a 64-person PTQ essentially in November, and they have 4 qualifiers on the weekends leading up to it where you can win free entry to this event. Definitely check them out. WizardTower.com. Great sponsor of this podcast since day one.
But yeah, because the bannings aren't in effect yet, so friend of the show, Benson, took his Hogak deck out to Modern tonight to give it an open casket funeral. Just let people look at it again.
One last hurrah for the boys. Yeah, so Stoneforge gets its first time in the sun and Paper Magic this Friday. But there was also another unbanning that we haven't touched on yet.
2 unbannings.
Rampaging Ferocidon
This one
Standard.
was the real Injustice, and I'm glad.
Injustice.
Injustice.
There you go.
Unjustice. De-justice. There was no justice
It was
of any
very
form.
Non-justice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, go on.
There was nothing right with this card remaining banned after the format that it got banned in rotated. I don't know why they left it on the ban list and didn't just unban it when Standard last rotated, but I guess it gets to join in for the party of this rotation.
Yeah, just the last month.
Yeah.
Ferocidon's back for a few more weeks before it gets the axe again with rotation, but
I mean, this is definitely just a response where they realize, wait, why is this thing still banned? Also, it's good against the best 2 decks in the format right now, so maybe it'll prevent things from being just only Field of the Dead decks, which is what it's felt like for a while now.
yeah,
So
not much reason to stray away from Field of the Dead
I don't think
recently.
there's going to be a reason after rotation either. Field of the Dead is an absurd card.
Yeah, but Ferocidon definitely does give you some game there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Is it really that good, though? I feel like when Vampires gets you, like, they got you already, you know?
Yeah. On it, yeah. I actually don't think it's that good.
Yeah,
But-
it's definitely good, though. I think it's a good thing, and it's good. I also like that they said it's still banned in Best of One on Arena because Mono Red is just the best deck in Best of One, obviously, because people don't know what they're playing against. Keep 7 drops, and then, you know, you get them with the turn 1, you know, Fnatic. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it's just generally good. It should not have been banned for the last, you know, several months, as Cam pointed out. 11 months, I guess. Shouldn't have been banned, right? Should have been unbanned last rotation.
Yeah, definitely should have. But I guess it gets to stretch its legs, join in with its other dino brethren.
Before it gets Star of Extinction.
Yeah, Jund Dinos. Does Jund Dinos now just become one of the...
Hey, yeah.
It actually has game versus Scapeshift now, which you just could not ever beat in a million years.
Yeah, that's what
before.
some people were saying. It could, you know, push Jund into probably not the best deck, but playable in this field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Jund Dinos is a very good deck. I mean, their nut draw is terrifying.
Yeah.
And this helps a lot versus the cards you're worried about out of Scapeshift. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, a lot of the Scapeshift decks can still just combo you right away. You know, there's essentially infinite 2/2s. But yeah, I mean, enough that the Ferocidon won't kill you, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, they make 13 2/2s and then attack you. It's usually, you know, Ferocidon ain't helping that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that they unbanned it here. I think it is well positioned in the metagame and a good unbanning.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously there's going to be people who are worried about Mono Red just being back to being too good again, but I don't know, Mono Red has been good for pretty much the entirety of Standard. Like, let's be real, it's been very, very good.
Mono Red's been good for the last 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm cool with it not being the best deck for a while.
Yeah, but I mean, with this format specifically, it hasn't been per se like one of the better decks. I guess since the core set came out, really.
Yeah, the core set for sure was the sort of nail in the coffin, and before that, War of the Spark was also pretty rough for Mono Red.
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of people thought Mono Red wasn't good in that format, but then it came back and it top forward the Mythic Championship.
Yeah.
It was still incredible.
No, it's still good, but you know, we're used to dealing in a world where aggro and Standard is just so far above every other deck choice that you know, it started to be a joke in our Pro Tour predictions for Standard that we'd all be like, I don't know. We make all these predictions and then in the end we go, yeah, but it's probably just 6 to 7 mono red decks and then 1 random control deck or something.
Well, yeah, I felt for a long time it was the only decks we'd be talking about were mono red, mono white, and mono blue, right? Like,
that was horrible.
But yeah,
Horrible that people weren't playing mono blue only.
Should have been one deck.
Yeah, and I mean, like, worst comes to worst, even if Frostodon does end up being too powerful and pushing mono red to the forefront of the format again, I mean, we only have to deal it for
And they can always just emergency ban it again.
They're just not going to care for a month. Like this
it's
unban, realistically, this unban don't matter.
No,
No.
it's fine. Maybe it's just a consideration for the
For justice?
for the historic format when the standard rotates on Arena, right? Just so you can play this card and not just lose to Field of the Dead all
When
the
you
time.
play Classic Standard.
Yeah, exactly.
What if it gets like banned in best of 1 historic, but not best of 3 historic? Do you think they'll like maintain a separate ban list in that format?
Yeah, I don't even know. Do they just let Nexus run rampant on best of 1 historic?
I mean, you have to ban Teferi 3. I think is the number one thing.
Do you?
I think if it's historic in that it operates like Hearthstone's Wild, where it operates like Modern, the last couple sets and then everything up till whatever is on Arena is legal.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, then they have to ban Teferi 3 because Teferi 3 is just okay. So like in this format, counterspells aren't ever playable.
People hate counter spells though.
Instant speeds, but yeah, they literally that means they're just making a format where you have to play blue and white and you can't play instant speed interaction. That's the format because Teferi 3 is so incredibly powerful. This is a card that is at this point starting to breach some of the most played cards in modern tournaments. Like it's starting to breach top 10 spells. It's just 9 1-drops and then Teferi 3. This is including creatures. They always count the metric for creatures and spells differently.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, you can find lists that are just 9 1-drop spells and then Teferi 3. So that it has that sort of presence in modern, I think, to me, you can't have this in a historic Arena. I mean, this card sees 4 of in vintage some decks, I mean, this card.
So I guess
Card's
since we've spent most of this episode talking about bannings and unbannings, it might be interesting to discuss Teferi a little bit. I mean, we have this deck. This card is in the format for another year, a bit over another year. Is this a card that maybe is in the same realm of Reflector Mage, that it survives for maybe half the format until people are finally just
I'm scared.
too sick of it?
I think they should have banned it at this announcement.
Yeah, like
I think card's horrible. It's horrendous. I mean, I'm going to play 4 in every single deck I play until they ban it.
And it's going to be even stronger relatively in small standard.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to run over small standard.
Like, I think I've had this discussion with you before, Adam, and other people. Like, I can't imagine what series or collection of cards they would have to print and how strong they would have to be in the next set in Throne of Eldraine for Teferi to not just be the best thing to do in the format. And it would just be something more miserable if Teferi wasn't good.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're totally right.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be like the first 1 or 2 tournaments of Throne of Eldraine standard are just infested with Teferis and then it gets banned. But they're also...
Or the blue-white support for it doesn't line up and it just doesn't see play until a few sets later. That's also a possibility. You never know with rotation.
Right. If the support isn't there for it and it sleeps for a bit, then I guess that's also fine. But like worst case scenario, and what I think is the most likely scenario, is that it still sort of run rampant over the format. And they're a bit gun shy about implementing another ban in standard, and so it just does that for the remainder of its life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that card is a mistake and should not have been printed. But I think it probably should have been banned in standard on this ban.
Although I can say for certain that
sorry, go ahead.
I can say for certain that Teferi 3 will not be emergency banned.
No.
Because WotC can't interact at instant speed.
All right, well played. I didn't see that one coming.
I thought you were actually going to make an interesting point there. You got me.
Come on, where do you think we are now?
What were you going to say?
Man, I can't remember.
All right.
I had a big bowl of chili.
Yeah, with Throne of Eldraine, we don't really have any idea what's going to be going on with the dual lands in that format, but I can't imagine we'll see anything less than a pretty normal 3-color format until the Shocklands rotate, right?
Like if the blue-white Scryland is in Throne of Eldraine, then you probably just do whatever you want with Teferi.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you have Hall of Fountain and the Scryland. Like, it's just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, the last time we had Shocks and Temples and Standard, there was, Abzan, Sultai, most of the decks in the front.
Oh, yeah, no. You can
color, right?
play basically whatever you want to because of Circuitous Route and all this other stuff that's going to be in the format, Growth Spiral. So, Feel of the Dead's going to warp things too. Yeah. I mean, Standard's going to be... I'm interested to see how dominant Teferi is, but there's a chance it's not that dominant. We'll see. Things are wide open right now. Craziness.
And I think a lot of people have been looking forward to this rotation because they thought they would get rid of a Teferi. This is when Teferi 5 leaves.
That's true.
And everyone has forgotten about him. He's been overshadowed by his younger brother, younger self.
Should just make Teferi 5 evergreen. Wouldn't that be great?
No.
Yeah, that card sucks too. I hate that card.
It's funny though, because remember how much people would complain about that card in previous formats, and how busted it was.
How naive we were.
Yeah, and just it I haven't heard anybody complain about Teferi 5 since.
Costs 5 mana. You get a 2 mana discount, but why wait for the discount when you can just cast Teferi on 3?
And it only draws a card and then gives you a discount that you can maybe use rather than impacting the board and drawing a card and shutting out your opponent. And
good times.
Yeah.
But I got nothing really else as far as bannings and stuff.
All right. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. Check them out. Got some great events, great store, great sponsor of this podcast. If you want to support the show, check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/DWC Podcast. We have awesome tiered benefits, custom tokens on their way again for a second round. Got all patrons get access to the DWC Discord as well as the...
we are struggling today out here.
as well as the DWC pre-show, our unedited chat that we record before every show. Yeah. You can find us on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 and on Facebook at the Disorganized Wizards Club Podcast. And however you listen to the show, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, any podcast app, leave a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. Everything helps this thing grow and bring it to new listeners. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Speaking of joining the club, you know what I learned when I was sending out our last giveaway prizes?
What's that?
You don't have to address letters to like a name. You can address them to Twitter handles. You can address them to screen names as long as the address is right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I asked the lady at the post office.
Fun fact for all of you who stuck around this long. We'll see ya
later.